Welcome to Gut Punch, the podcast that explores life-changing moments. Hosted by Kathryn Lancioni, a seasoned educator with personal insights into resilience. Kathryn shares how life can change in an instant, shaping our path forward. Each episode features inspiring guests who face their own gut punch moments. Guests share their journeys through loss, upheaval, and triumph. What to expect: honest conversations, lessons in resilience, inspiration for growth. Join Kathryn as she highlights courage and perseverance in every story. Gut Punch is a reminder that there is always a path forward. Be part of the conversation. Register now to join Kathryn for today's journey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. My name is Kathryn Lancioni, and I'm your host for today's show. Today, we are joined by Nora Osman, who is a fellow with me at the Institute for Digital Transformation and the author of a new book about life, gut punches, and other things. So, Nora, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I'm excited for today's conversation. So before we talk about the book and the gut punch, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, thank you. So I am founder and CEO of Norvana, which is a company I started just a little over 2 years ago. I'm extremely passionate about something called customer experience. But if you really think about it, more than just the external customer experience, the employee experience as well. So in essence, the human experience. And that is foundationally why I've decided to do this thing called a book. I'll tell you all about that in a minute. But before that, there was a little story that happened. So that was the precipice for that.
So why don't you, the anticipation, why don't you tell us about that little thing that happened? And then we can talk about how that translated into a book.
Sure. So nobody ever really expects that something significant is going to happen to their career outside of their control. We tend to think that we're going to be in the driver's seat. We get to choose which organization, what role, and hopefully climb the success ladder. And that was my trajectory as well. I've been very stable all my life, always climbing up the ladder and always expanding my skill set. The last position I had was the VP of the Service Management Office of a very large healthcare organization in New York. And with that came a lot of growth and a lot of opportunities and probably some of the best years of my life. And then I had my gut punch moment. I was not expecting that after putting a lot of time and effort to helping the organization get through the COVID pandemic, transforming their entire IT stack, and really maturing their portfolio to where it's extremely customer centric and award winning, that I was going to be laid off and facing an opportunity to really evaluate my trajectory from that point forward. And it was really a very, very strong moment of truth for me. You always hear about other people getting laid off, or at least I always did. Honestly, it was one of those things that I was in shock. I was completely taken back and I couldn't understand how it had happened, even though I knew exactly what was happening with outsourcing in my organization. And I knew my department was heavily impacted. But I was so focused on trying to make sure everybody lands well that I didn't even think about myself, really, until October 30th. Until I got that call, October 30th, 2023, day I probably will not forget for a very long time because, just one of those things. And I'll never forget the conversation. It was happening at a time that I didn't expect to be talking about anything except business with my manager. And, you kind of hope that at least in situations like that, you're having a one-on-one in a private room. But when you're doing things on Zoom or on a Teams, it's very, very different. You never know who's going to show up and you're still not prepared for HR to just join in on a meeting that you thought you were just having an update. Anyway, long story short, it felt like an ice bucket coming down on me. And I'm one who handles adversity pretty well, but still you freeze. There's the fight or flight or freeze moment.
Yeah.
For me, it was a freeze moment. And I remember being so unable to articulate what had happened. It took me a good half hour to actually get out of my office and go find a family member. And it was my husband upstairs in our bedroom. And I had to tell him what had just happened. And I just had no ability to explain beyond this catastrophic thing happening. And so for me, it was a gut punch moment because I did not expect it at all. I was a superstar leader. I'd done phenomenal work all my life. I'd elevated so many people. I'd helped career trajectories flourish for so many individuals. And I myself thought upward and onward and never, ever going to be released from duties. To be told your services are not needed any longer. Those are words that you never expect to hear.
No, you never expect to hear. And I was going to say, as much as you mentally observe what's going on around you, you never think it's going to happen to you.
No,
You can't mentally prepare for it. It just kind of happens.
exactly. And I'm going to say that the things that go through your head when this happens, and I wrote a whole article about this on the anniversary of my news, just to put it behind me because I felt it just needed to be in writing.
Yeah, you had to get it out of your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I had it to get out of my head. I'd moved on. I'd already made decisions, but I felt that that gut punch moment needed to be captured in some way. And ironically, I actually did not include that in my book, but there was just so many other things I wanted to really focus on. But you go through so many gyrations and so many feelings, especially wondering, how am I going to take care of my family with healthcare?
Yes.
Who was the one who was attached to the healthcare? That was the biggest thing. And I have a husband who has a condition, and this immediately became very jarring for me. You look at the worst possible scenario when that happens
Yep.
because you just don't know the answer to anything at that moment. So that to me, I think was the biggest aha moment. Holy crap, I don't know how I'm going to solve this. This is not something I ever thought I would have to worry about.
Well, and yes, it's something you never thought you were going to have to worry about. And then suddenly you do. And that pressure of, the healthcare thing, especially these days, like, boy, is that a challenge for so many people. So you got terminated, and it's never, as they say, it's never a good sign when the HR person shows up on the call. So you got terminated on Zoom, which is horrible. You go and talk to your husband. You have I'm going to just say it, holy shit moment of like, that actually happened. Then what?
Then you go into strategy mode. You're like, okay, I'm alive.
Yes.
Got this. I've solved many, many problems in my life. I've had many adverse situations happen, and in your bones, you're going to survive this. It's just around, okay, what are the options, right? It becomes tactical and strategic at the same time because you are thinking through all the different opportunities and also trying to make sure that you're being open-minded and futuristic as well, right? You don't want to do anything drastic, especially when you're part of a layoff. They make you sign paperwork. You've got all these non-disclosures, all that good stuff, right? And so you're starting to think, okay, well, how's this going to impact my employability?
Yes.
And yeah, I'm over 40. So is ageism going to affect me?
Right.
And I'm a woman. Is that going to be a strike against me as an unemployed woman that's over 40? And these are things that I hadn't thought about until HR actually told me you should be concerned because you're in that age bracket. It's part of one of the many things that they were concerned about, that somehow I would, be looking for compensation or retaliation or whatever. That's not how I roll. That's not who I am. I move on and I look at other opportunities, but you start to think about the perception of you, because there's always that inkling of fear that, what if they think I did something wrong?
Of course. Yeah.
What if
Yes.
they think I'm an underperformer because other people didn't get laid off? Well,
Right.
why you? So there are those rumblings of doubt that come in, and you start to really, really wonder, is this going to be the nail in my coffin? Is this going to be the Achilles heel? Is this the thing that's going to come back and perpetually torture me for the rest of my life?
Well, and I think too, I just wanted to build on what you were saying. This, like, also there's this fear, and this came up in another episode of the show of like, is there anything I could have done differently? Right? Was there something I did? Was there, in this case, workplace? Is there a comment I made? With like, what triggered this? Because as you said, like, other people didn't get laid off, and it was nothing like that. But that is a natural thought, I think, for people, for us to go into.
Look, I'm not going to say on record what was happening behind the scenes. It does not matter.
It doesn't matter.
Irrelevant. But yeah, there were dynamics, and maybe there were things that could have been done differently, but I'm not going to discuss that.
Yeah, no.
because that's behind me at this point. But the emotions of the day were real, they were raw, and they were almost crippling to a certain extent for a couple of days.
So
Luckily for me, it wasn't a couple of weeks and months.
which is just a testimony to your incredible personality. So what was it that empowered you to move on, that didn't make it a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it just made it a couple of days? Like, what was it? What did you say to yourself? What did you do? What actions did you take?
So I realized that the timing was very interesting. It was October 30th. So what's happening in November? Holidays.
Right.
You've got Thanksgiving. What's also happening in November? Nobody's hiring.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. There's this thing called Nosember. I heard about this later. Between November and December, nobody's hiring anything, and nobody's doing anything, and nobody's rocking the vote. So I immediately knew that there's nothing going to happen between November and end of year.
Right.
So I calmed myself and realized, okay, this is my time to really evaluate, reassess how I'm going to show up in the beginning of the year. And interestingly, so many people reached out to me once the news cascaded, because honestly, I did not stick around the day I heard about it. I had a couple of days and then I was vacating my office. So I was not in the office long enough to communicate broadly that I was departing. So people eventually noticed my absence, eventually had inquisitions and started to reach out, and I told them what I told them. But there was a lot of, what are you going to do? What's your plan? And I'm like, don't have one yet, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And what started to become a very obvious question was, have you thought about consulting? Have you thought about doing advisory work? And I'm going to tell you, my knee-jerk reaction was like, what in the world would I do that?
Yeah.
I would rather put needles in my eyes, frankly. That was my initial reaction to that. And then I said, but wait a second. Why am I feeling this way? I mean, I'm a coach.
Right.
So I'm all about unpacking what's beneath the emotion and figuring out the limiting belief there. And I said, well, what is it that's really bothersome about that for me? Because by the way, my whole life is upside down right now. They've taken a wrecking ball to my stability, to all the things that I took for granted and I thought were permanent. And so why do I think that that is so out there? And I remember exactly the moment that I decided I'm going to move forward with starting on my own. It was January 2nd. It was a Tuesday. We celebrated New Year's. Everybody had gone off to work. I was sitting on my white couch with my cat. By the way, my son, my daughter decided that, whoa, this is a big deal. Mom's going to need some emotional support.
Yeah.
I think it's time for a kitten. And so literally they took me in, we went and we got a kitten, and I named him Spice because he looked like a spice ball and he's amazing. We won't talk about cats too much because he's not the only cat. So we've got a cat thing going on here. But it was January 2nd and I decided at that moment that it's just me, and the silence was deafening in the house. And I said, I think I need to have that high dive moment right now. And I talk about this in my book, the high dive moment, where you're at the edge of a high dive board and you're staring down at what feels like the pit in the middle of the earth. And it feels like it's miles away and it feels like it's going to swallow you whole, but it's water, and
Yeah.
you're not going to explode if you jump in.
No.
And I remember saying, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to at least try. I think this happened for a reason. And instead of me thinking of this as the end of the world, this is just the inflection point. This is the fork in the road. What if this happened so that I could decide, instead of going right back into corporate America, I pivot left and I try something different, something that scares me, something that has no chartered course for me, something that might be actually really exciting and beneficial. And so January 2nd, I decided, let me research what it takes to move on and do this LLC thing that people talk about. And by January 5th, I was already signed up and I started Norvana. And the reason it's Norvana, my kids said, please don't call it Norvana. And I said, here's the thing. Everybody talks about Nirvana and we're not talking about the band, but this ideal state and where everybody wants to be. And I'm like, I have no idea where that is. Nobody knows where it is in this world, but it means different things for different people. So it's a journey.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? All I know is I have the ability to take people on a path to self-improve, to transform. And for me, that's just going to be Norvana. That's the Norvana journey. So that's it. And I stuck with it and I said, that's it. It's all about inspiration and transformation. And so that began that journey for me.
Yeah, and it's easy, it's scary to deviate from the norm, right? The easy thing for you to have done would have just gone back and would have been to go into another corporate job because you'd always done that.
Exactly. And it's the safer route. And it's the tried and true, and it comes snapped on with benefits and K and vacations. And the myth is, it's glamorous to be on your own. You're your own boss and you set your own schedule and no big deal. It is hard work.
It's a lot of work. And
It
it's
is
also very
hard,
lonely work.
hard work. It is a grind. It is exciting and exhausting and riveting and insane all in the same moment. But it was meant to be for me.
Well, and the other part I was going to say, it's also all you, right? So, I mean, I know from my own journey that like everything I do is me, right? There's no one that's helping me do this. So if I'm going to decide to write a speech, to go and speech at XYZ event, that's me. If I decide I'm going to go and do a workshop, that's me. If you decide you're going to write your newsletter, that's you. And if you decided to write your book, which you did, and I applaud you for that, it's a Herculean effort, that's you. And so it's like, you're not every day going into an office, sitting behind a desk, getting your coffee out of the free coffee machine, and then going through your list of scheduled appointments, blah, blah, blah. Like you're setting your own agenda every day by your own priorities, which is amazing and empowering, but also scary as heck.
Exactly. But you hit the nail on the head. You said something brilliant. And I'm glad that you brought it up and I didn't bring it up. I was not allowed to bring all of me to the office.
Yeah.
We rarely are. We've got a job description and we've got to fill whatever percentages the tasks that we're asked to do, right? But I had all this design and creativity and energy and motivation and insanity that I wanted to tap into.
Yep.
I didn't want to be put in a box all the time. I didn't like feeling shackled all the time. And that's the thing that I felt so relieved when I became unshackled. And that was the word that I kept using when people would check in with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very vivid. I've used
I
the
feel
word.
so liberated. I feel unshackled. I feel for the first time, yes, I'm scared, I'm nervous, but I could breathe. I could breathe and I feel relieved and happy, which was something I never expected I would say.
It's amazing.
And what propelled me was the desire to figure it out.
Yeah.
I've never been afraid of problem solving. It's always been one of my strengths. So I said, all right, this is a bigger problem than most.
Right.
But you know what? I jumped in. I'm in the water. I don't think there are sharks in this pool. I'm just going to have to figure it out. And it's been really quite an exciting experience.
It's amazing. I love this. Ugh. All right. So the book, talk about the book. Again, for someone I've been working on a book for 2 years now and it's not out. What was your motivation? How did you do it? Again, it's a very, I've written textbooks and I remember it's a very lonely journey. It's very hard to motivate. It's very hard to focus. It's very hard not to check your phone and make a phone, whatever. Like, what was the idea? How did you do it? Talk us through that process.
So that was something I didn't really believe when I made it one of my 2025 New Year's resolutions. I put 3 things on my resolution list. One of them was to write this book. And I knew like as I was writing it down that there's like a 5% chance I'm going to make this resolution. That's how far-fetched it was for me. But here's the thing. I signed up with a coach 5 years ago. And the reason I signed up with him was because I wanted to do a career pivot. I wanted to explore other opportunities. And he gave me the best advice ever. And you're going to get this. You're going to love this because it's up your alley. He said, focus on building your brand. Focus on showing the world who you are. So I started that journey 3 or 4 years ago, exploring my own voice and putting content out there. So I started to write articles. That's how I got picked up by the Institute. I started to share a lot of my experience.
Yes.
So I was practicing already a lot of my writing in the forms of short stories, via articles. I got published in different editorials. I got spotlights for some of the things I wrote. I got some nominations for things. And so I had already started to test my voice out there. And then I realized my number one platform was LinkedIn. And the reason why I was nervous about that is because it's very constraining. And so with LinkedIn, I don't know, I think I have over 100 articles published over multiple years. It just didn't feel as expansive as I wanted to. So I started this newsletter called 2 Cent Tuesdays, September 17th, 2024.
Okay.
So the same year that I was pivoting out, I started the newsletter, and lo and behold, that became a very, very well-received platform, like almost 60% open rate.
Oh, that's
People were
amazing.
talking to me about my articles when they would meet me. They would text me, email me, call me. And so I said, all right, there's something there. And I'm giving you this, I'm setting the table because all of these things led me to that point where, like, how hard could this be? I write articles all the time. I've got a newsletter weekly. This is not once a month, a weekly newsletter. So I'm constantly exercising that muscle of writing. So how it happened is I was scheduled for vacation with my husband, our anniversary in July. And I said, look, it's a high dive moment. I'm going to just give it a shot. We're going away for a week. We're going to be in Barbados. I'm just going to take my laptop. And even if I spent 15 minutes in the morning just writing my thoughts, if it comes to me, great. If it doesn't, I'll tackle it when I get back. And lo and behold, I ended up writing something like 5 or 6 chapters while I was away.
Yeah.
Because I got into a state of flow. And even though my original coach told me, hey, you've got so much content, you should just feed it up to ChatGPT or AI and have it write the book for you. You got that much content. I could not get myself to do anything with AI. I said, there's no way that the flow from an AI or an artificial agent is going to be the same as me putting it into the world.
Right.
And so, believe it or not, I don't want to jinx myself, but it came to me a lot more naturally than I expected. I just had the discipline once a day to sit down for half an hour to an hour. Whatever came down and into my laptop became a chapter or half a chapter. And over the course of 4 weeks, part-time, I wrote this book.
That's amazing.
So
It's amazing.
it
Congratulations.
was a gift from God. Honestly, I think it was a state of flow that I did not expect to be in. I was so, so grateful that it just happened naturally. And because of that, I feel I was driven to write this book.
Yep.
It was a part of my purpose. And honestly, it was really around communicating what I'm very passionate about. When you write about something or you talk about something you're extremely passionate about, it's not work. It's natural.
That's right.
It's your area of focus, your passion, your expertise, what you feel very, very strongly about. And for me, it's around the leadership journey and how we have these moments of truth every time we connect with people. And they're either really, really good hero moments or they're really, really bad zero moments. If they're in between, you don't really remember them. You don't talk about them. But every opportunity to engage with somebody, you can make it a hero moment if you lean in.
Yes, that's right. And I will say that, first of all, your newsletter comes out every Tuesday like clockwork. I always look for it when it pops in. I'm like, there it is. I know it's Tuesday because I get your newsletter. So I love that. And on the book, I know. I look forward to it. And what I also love, when you're talking about the book is that state of flow is so important, right? Like you need to be in the right mindset, in the right moment. I know for me, when I was working on my textbooks, what I would do, it was during COVID, so there was like a less distraction, but I would block out 2 hours every morning. And I think it was between 10 and 12. And I would sit in the kitchen. They always say you have to have a designated place to work. So I would sit in the kitchen at the kitchen countertop and just every morning between 10 and 12, I would work on the book and then I would put it down, put the computer away and go on to something else. And over time, kind of learned to, okay, this is book time. So you're going to focus on this. But it took me a while to get into a cadence. I don't know if you experienced this, but after a while, it became part of my daily routine. So
Yeah.
I actually looked forward to having that 2-hour period or 90-minute period, whatever I could do
I got
to write.
excited as I was writing
Yeah.
because I said, oh, I want to tell this story.
Yeah.
I want this example in there. It just started to form on its own.
Started to
So
gel.
every chapter ended up having a main theme for
Yeah.
it. And here is one thing that I was doing with AI at the end. At the end of every chapter, I would feed my content. And I know you're not supposed to feed your stuff into AI, but I fed my chapter to get a sanity check.
Yes.
And I said, tell me what theme evolved. What were the stories I told? because as I'm writing, I'm forgetting what chapter I wrote what. I don't want to repeat the same stories, right? So it kind of indexed the chapter for me, and that was good enough. Then it would suggest, oh, let me rewrite. I'm like, no, let me write the book. I don't want any help. If it's not great, whatever, we'll tackle it later. But I didn't want interference. And so when I was done, what it did is it evolved 4 themes. It said you have very consistent themes, 4 of them. You just need to readjust the order of the chapters. There were just a couple that needed to be put into a different sequence. And that was it. That was the extent of what I got. The structural review to just make them adjacent so that they flow better. And frankly, that was easy. That was minimal. And I didn't want to change the way I sound. I didn't want to change who I am. I didn't want to try to fit anybody's formula. It was what it was. This is just organic.
Well, and as I teach public speaking, as we all know. And what I always tell my students is always talk about stuff that you know, right? Because it doesn't seem like research. It doesn't seem like homework when you're putting the speech together. And then when you get up in front of the room to give the speech, if you forget something, it's okay because you have so much knowledge. And what I love about your book, when you're talking about like writing about something that's so natural to you, it makes it a joy to write and a pleasure to share. And I think that it doesn't seem like you're excited to get it done. You're excited to get it through the publishing process. And it's like a child, like you're excited to get it out there in the world.
And here's the secret. I did not tell anybody except my husband and my 2 kids that I was writing the book, but they did not get to read even 1 sentence of the book. Until now, they actually have not read the book. So they have no idea really what it's fully about. They have some concept of it, but they've not read it. But I did give it to several early readers. This amazing lady, Kathryn Lancioni, you should hear about. Oh my God, she's so phenomenal. I gave her the book to read in its raw format. And, there were probably like 15 people that read the book, and thank you. And honestly, I was kind of nervous. I was like, oh my God. So one thing I was mentioning to you is the imposter syndrome. It was real. So you write a book and you're writing it in a vacuum. I was not sharing it with anybody, not my family members, not my husband, not close friends. Nobody knew what I was writing about. And so you finally release it to somebody, and nobody wants their baby called ugly, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I got 15 people that are going to tell me, why did you write this book? What the hell's going on? Do you really want to go live with this book? I didn't have a publisher. I had nobody guiding me. And honestly, I was so, so, so overwhelmed with the kind of feedback I got. It
Wonderful.
was very, very positive. It was extremely encouraging. And I made sure that different areas. It wasn't one type of person or one level or one gender. This is a gender agnostic book. And I wanted to make sure I got perspective from both men and women.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially that there is a chapter in there. And I think I may have asked you to focus
Women
on
chapter.
the womanhood experience chapter, which by far was one of the few things that I was worried about in there, which is it being very, very open and explosive or exposure.
And
It's
that's
very personal,
yeah.
but it's also exposing us to
Yeah.
the men. But you know something? We need to be in each other's corner. We need to know what's going on behind the
Right.
scenes. And this happened this way. And I wrote it from a place of vulnerability. I had to protect the interests of people around me. So I couldn't name too many things that were extremely personal for others. I shared some truths that I was nervous about sharing. And when I was done, it was a huge catharsis for me.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
I'll tell you, every time I read that chapter, it released emotions again. I mean, I sobbed, and I think I may have told you this. I audio book recorded myself. So
That's
it's my
great.
voice. That was the hardest chapter to read out loud. My voice quivers in that audiobook, but I didn't stop the recording and I didn't try to mask it because it's emotional. And that's, I think, the piece that the men who read the book and other women recognized is this was written from a very personal space with the intention of helping as many people as possible and to share truths that people don't always have exposure to.
Yeah. And I think anytime you put yourself out there, you have that moment of pause of like, do I really want to do this? Or sometimes it's like, did I actually really say that? And I've definitely had those moments on both ends. But my belief is always stick with the plan. Like whatever I said or whatever I decide to do, whatever schedule I put together, stick with the plan. Usually my original thought is better than the revised thought. And I've learned that I personally, once I get something out there, whether it was intentional or not, it's always very liberating.
Yeah.
Because it's out of your head, it's off your shoulders, and it's in the public sphere. Usually, there's no blowback. Usually, people applaud when you're vulnerable, and in some ways, hopefully, learn from your own vulnerability and your own authenticity.
I mean, I have so many failures in that book that I shared as zero
Yeah.
moment because I wanted people to know, hey, it's part of the path.
Yes,
You have to expect it and you have to be graceful with yourself.
that's
Give
right.
yourself grace.
That's
You
right.
cannot crucify yourself every time you screw up. You cannot hold yourself to that impossible standard. Nobody is perfect.
That's right.
And everybody in every stage has moments like that. And your moment of truth, I mean, I just wrote about something in my newsletter, in my inspiration corner about Friday the 13th. I mean, I was having one hell of a Friday the 13th,
Right.
this past one. So I won't steal my own thunder, but we have moments like that all the time. And it's how you choose to respond to it that makes a difference. And this book is really about that. So you want a sneak peek? Do you want to see it?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so what is that? What is the art on the cover?
Okay, so
Lips? Is it lips?
this is this is a light bulb moment,
Okay.
but it also represents the person, the head of a person,
Yeah.
and the hero's cape.
I love
So
that.
it's about inspiring you to transform to be a hero.
I love the light bulb moment
Because
thing.
you're going from zero, like you've got the negative space here, to
Yeah.
hero right there.
I love the title. How did you come up with that?
I've been writing Zero to Hero in my newsletter for a long time, and it was originally about the moments of truth. And I'm very concrete around there's always opportunity to go from zero to hero. You can always make things better.
Yes.
It's just a matter of the choice.
Yes.
You can't allow that to define you, that zero moment. And so I just leaned in and I said, well, what if it's as simple as calling it Zero to Hero? I've been talking about this through my newsletters. It's the title of my spotlight piece in there. Why do I need to reinvent and come up with something different? It's already been tested. It's already been out there, and it's just what I think.
I love it. It's so catchy. All right. So when is the book? So let's, before we hop off, when is the book coming out? How can people find it, buy it? And then how can they get a hold of you? Give us all that good information.
Okay. So I've just been told that the release will be March 4th. So March 4th of this year.
It's
So
amazing.
that's only a little while from now. And
It's like 10 days away. It's next Wednesday. That's amazing.
yeah, so it'll first be available through Amazon for ebook and paperback. And then it'll also be available for hardback ordering through Amazon and then through Audible, their KDP. So different ways for people to consume it. It's all online. Hopefully the Ingram Sparks farm will also have it available physically published in some, I don't know, Barnes and Noble or bookstores or whatever, but that I don't have control over. So they could definitely go online and get it through Amazon, but also my website, noraosman.com, will have links to it for anybody who's interested.
Wonderful. I can't wait to read the whole thing. And then
There will be eventually more opportunities to talk about it through different forums. So I will be hosting a launch party sometime, probably early June, and people that are interested could seek me out and we can get them there.
amazing. And then what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
I respond to LinkedIn posts
Okay.
and comments and emails, and even noraosman.com. You can contact me right through there, and it has a link to my Calendly. So I always make myself available for people. So
Wonderful. Well, Nora, thank you so much. I love learning about the book. I love learning the backstory on it. And thanks for sharing so much about yourself and so much wisdom with all of us. It was an absolute pleasure.
thank you. I appreciate it. It's been great talking about that gut punch moment and the transformation and not allowing that zero moment to stay forever. So
Yeah, I think it's going to be an incredible story for so many people to hear. So thank you. And thank all of you for listening to another episode of the Gut Punch podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
That's it for today's episode of Gut Punch. I hope you found inspiration, because no matter how hard life hits, there's always a way forward. Make sure to follow or subscribe to Gut Punch on your favorite podcast platform. If you know someone who could use a little inspiration, share this episode with them. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay strong. See you in the next episode.